Welcome to Common Sense. I'm Ed.
And I'm John. How you doing, Ed?
I'm good, John. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. And we're lucky to have another great partner with us today, a real expert in the field of business development reps. And that's Amir Reiter of CloudTask. It is Reiter, isn't it?
It is Reiter.
Okay.
That's correct.
So he's here to talk with us today about really one of the most serious sales problems facing any B2B company, but in particular industrial companies. And that is, what do you do with all these leads that you generate, qualified or not? And most of them get ignored or they're reached too late, So,
everybody says, oh, that's a great problem to have. Give us that problem. We'll solve that problem. No problem. And none of them do.
Not so much.
Well, they're trying to solve the same problem with the same solution. That's not working.
So, Amir, why don't you introduce yourself first and give us a little background, and then we'll just dive into this thing.
Yeah, 100%. My name's Amir Reiter. I'm the CEO and founder of CloudTask. And what we are is a growth center, right? And a lot of people have heard of call centers, and you think of customer support. Some have heard of BPO, and you could think of a big factory of employees doing high-level processes. And really what a growth center is a company that specializes in managing the full growth center wheel of a company, right? Sales, customer success, and customer support. But we were bred out of sales, which is typically the hardest function, and allows us to move downstream to understand customer success and support, and ultimately customer support, which is closing cases and having a very high NPS score. But topic of this conversation will focus on that growth side of the growth center, which is sales development reps or quota carrying account executives, which I'm sure we've all been in the past, right?
Oh yeah.
And originally,
not doing it anymore, right?
Your accent, you're sitting in Colombia right now, but your accent sounds like a Yankees fan.
Oh, I was born in Long Island. I did a tour. Going south. I went to Arizona first for college, then Miami, and now Colombia. So I zigzagged down south to the equator.
Oh, you missed Houston. That's too bad.
I miss Houston. Yeah, I'll go back. I can go back. Yeah.
I'll buy you a beer when you get here.
I will gladly accept that.
But also interesting background, if I remember correctly, in software sales and in B2B office supplies and a whole wide range of things that give you kind of this blended perspective.
Yeah, and I've been working. I worked in surgical robotics as well, which was running a robotic program for a hospital, and then selling NetSuite, which is the heart of a business, right? It's basically the engine. And now people are trusting me with their workforce, which is the heart of a business as well. So I've stayed very close to technology and leadership. And I've always found myself in a position where I was helping leaders scale their companies and ideas, because I'm a firm believer that when you create a company or you create a service or product, you don't look in the mirror and say, I'm going to be the best at sales, I'm going to be the best at success, I want to be the best at support. You probably say, I want to be the best at making virtual reality a reality for people at homes, right? So people, I think, over the time, these positions that we've created have become stuck in our minds that in order to be successful at my business, I need to be the best at X, Y, Z. And I think we are trying to say is, no, you don't. In fact, with technology, with the way the wheel has changed, you can actually now reinvest more into your product and service, and let companies that actually specialize in sales, support, and success be in the business of people. And that's really what we're doing.
It kind of follows in the shared economy idea too, right?
It does, yeah.
You don't have to have everything under your roof.
100%, and we're following that same WeWork office momentum, right? You don't have to be in the business of office, and we can see that WeWork now is looking for the enterprise clients. They're looking for the AT&Ts, right? At first, they thought they were going to get the small companies, but now they're actually selling enterprise floors. So, we work with that WeWork movement where we have beautiful office 24/7, right? And we're almost like the corporate service in a box where you're getting the office, the management, the hiring, the training, and what you ultimately want, which is representation and results. I think a big thing that people forget is no matter who you hire or how you hire somebody, we all are here to represent a brand and results. And like if you look at if you look at LinkedIn, the new CEO is being measured on visitors to LinkedIn, right? That's his bonus. How long do they stay on the website, right? So everybody has a KPI, no matter who you are, and we kind of want to bring back employment to that feeling where who's representing my brand and what are they doing, right?
So full disclosure, I'm a client of yours. one of my clients is a client of yours, and you're a client of mine for intent data. And, as you talk about this situation, it's funny that people might hesitate to embrace it. I mean, to me, as your client, I am so thrilled to be able to not have to worry about trying to hire a BDR and coach them. I mean, that's not my thing. I don't know how to do it, much less have the management systems in place that you guys have. Talk a little bit about that. I think that's a common misconception. John and I will, I'm sure, come back to this question of industrial companies, but let's skip ahead to where an industrial company may say, you know what, you're right. My field salespeople aren't bird dogging these leads. I need somebody to do it. So I'm going to hire my own BDR. What's your answer to that, Amir?
Well, look, if you look at stats and you look at the Bridge report that's produced by the Bridge company, it's actually stating that sales development reps are sticking around for about 1.3 years, right? So if you look at statistically speaking from that stat alone, if it takes you about 90 days to onboard an SDR and they're going to leave about 9 months later, it's right off the bat. They also say that replacing a salesperson is about the equivalent of a year's salary, right? So I think those stats are alarming when it comes to why you would hire someone on your own. And then I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that, I can hire somebody, right? Yeah, you can, but they're going to be doing the same actions that have got you to the situation you're in. So I think what fundamentally is different about hiring a sales and service company is that we come with technology. We come with leads. We come with writers. We come with coaches. We come with hiring, firing, and training, and it's all included in the salary. So a lot of people, need to look at apples to apples, because if you hire someone directly, you're going to have to invest a tremendous amount of money learning new strategies, investing in new technologies, enabling them, and you're going to end up losing that employee before the time he starts performing. And if he performs really well, he's going to want to become an account executive. So now you're back at square zero. So I think that anybody looking to hire an SDR directly makes sense, right? There's plenty of SDRs that are hired directly, but there's also option A and option B. And if you evaluate option B and you're looking for scalable, repeatable outcomes, sales or service might be a good fit for you. If you are very keen on keeping your company small and you want somebody in your office, it might not be a good match. It really depends on your goals. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with having some friendly competition, right? If you have an SDR you hire directly who's performing XYZ, at XYZ cost, you can divide that performance by the cost and get your cost per qualified meetings. And if you do the same with us, I think the data should tell you where to scale, right? I think if people are getting repeatable outcomes at a higher level without us, we'd be the first person to say, hey, whatever you're doing, teach us your secrets. But that's rarely the case. So I think it's one doesn't replace the other, and there's a lot of value, and people need to compare really what their goals are.
Yeah, it's really similar to the rationale for hiring a marketing agency. Cost effectiveness is one thing, and then low risk by comparison to hiring your own staff. So, like you said, it depends on where you're at, but
that's a great analogy, John, because you get all these areas of expertise that get bolted on together. You can't afford, as a small business, to hire your own SEO person, your own email marketer, your own pay-per-click manager, et cetera, et cetera. And even if you could, they wouldn't be exposed to all the continuing best practices. They're going to be fairly stagnant. And very much the same thing. I mean, how many touches does it take for an SDR to be in touch with somebody? How can you scrape cell phone numbers in order to be in touch with somebody? How many people from the same company is the optimal number for you to be pursuing simultaneously? And those are the kinds of things that they're continuously optimizing for. And not to mention, testing subject lines and testing templates and scripts and the latest technology to make sure that your scripts are working properly and all that kind of stuff. It's part of what really impressed me when I went to visit Amir and his team was the coaching and the technology that they've kind of built into this platform for reporting and for internal management.
Yeah, and the upside is extremely measurable. Your close rates go up, your sales team performance goes up, all of that. And so it's a completely 100% accountable. So it's not like just hiring somebody and hoping for the best.
Yeah, and we're scalable. Like a top employee, top SDR is not scalable. He's got a life, he's got a wife, he's got kids, he's got dreams. He might leave to another company. With us, when we get it right with the team of 4, can go to a team of 10 because we know what right means. We know what it looks like, right? So I think a lot of times people have to also see the upside, right? What is the upside? And if you look at the upside where it's like, oh, I have an SDR here, an SDR there, I think you're looking at it wrong. I think the right way to look at it is when I get this SDR right there, I have the ability to press go, and I have the ability to have them do all the recruiting, all the training, and I'm just going to start paying a salary at the time that somebody's ready to produce.
So let's talk about that team of 4. I love your pod concept, and I kind of think of it in the context. If you're a typical industrial company, you hire a field salesperson between salary, commission, travel expenses, and overhead. It's going to cost you $250,000 a year for that person. I think that's probably like one of your pods.
No, it is.
And talk about a pod and what the advantages of that, kind of the way you envision that building out as a building block.
Yeah, so our pods right now are for 4 SDRs when it comes to the sales leader, and you're looking at about $17,500. So it is about the same salary you mentioned for a top sales guy, which is $210, but you're getting 4 people, and 4 can produce a lot more than 1. But not only that, though, something that actually has changed even since we've started talking is we actually went out and made a very strong partnership with a company called Apollo.io. And for those of you who may or may not know, there's companies like Discover.org and ZoomInfo, which are companies that provide databases, right? And then there's companies like SalesLoft and Outreach, which are sales enablement platforms that get out messages and phone calls. And what Apollo is both combined into one. And now we're also including that in the salary. So anytime that somebody actually hires a pod, they're also getting their own Apollo engine, which has 50,000 verified leads with a whole bunch of automation tools. So it's technology, leads, systems, plus 4 reps, which they're getting. And the idea here is that, instead of having 5 field reps that are subpar, sub-quota, why not have 1 or 2 that are crushing it, right? Because if you have a field rep who's way above quota, guess what? He's not going to leave, right? If you have 4 field reps that are below quota, if you're below quota, you're probably already looking for another job because you're saying to yourself, A, I'm probably not hitting my bonus, and B, they might fire me because I'm not hitting quota, right? So fundamentally, I think it's also a really good way for people to retain their top talent, and because there are, out of the team of so and so many field reps, there are a few people who get it. There are a few people who are listening to podcasts, they're listening to leaders like us conversation, they're making adjustments, and it's a good way to kind of weed out the weak ones, the ones that just want to, cherry pick the best leads, right? And that's kind of what we see that often, right? They go to trade shows, they got 50 cards, they take the 3 that say, they want to buy now. They make 3 sales and they're okay for the year, right?
But you're also building the model to be able to scale into other roles too. So if you've got a bunch of BDRs and they're doing a great job, well, then maybe what you need is an inside salesperson or a project manager or something like that. You can provide that entire spectrum, right? Yeah,
account executives and sales engineers. So sales engineers, solution experts, that'd be really common for a technical software where it's look at the ERP software, right? An account executive at that point might work with a sales engineer who then would prepare an instance of an accounting software to talk, with more of an accounting background. So yes, those are the layers that we have. We're doing the full cycle. In fact, I'm a firm believer that the funnel is flipped, and that the hardest part of sales now is making qualified meeting, especially in the US, because buyers are so in control. They're so informed that by the time they're talking to you, they've done their research already. So I think that things start becoming actually more downhill. Obviously, you have to be very educated, very professional, right? Like, can't have spelling mistakes if you're an account executive. But SDRs really are the unsung heroes of sales. They're the ones hitting the phones, if they're still hitting the phones. They're the ones getting the rejection every day, and they're taking sales sometimes 80% of the way, and they're not always getting the credit that they should, but that'll change.
Now, do you guys manage sales operations as well? Is that one of your roles? So
yes, we do.
Interface between marketing and sales?
We do, yeah. We don't advertise on our website, but we do have sales ops. Yeah.
That's awesome. Because that's a whole nother person, and all of these things take 3 to 6 months to bring up new employees up to speed. So there's the time factor as well that you're gaining. So,
and plus, there's a lot of unpredictability in the world right now. And so right now, so if we're talking about, geez, it would be great to plug 6 more people into your organization to be able to generate leads and manage it. At the same time, you might hesitate and say, I'm not going to go hire 6 people with health insurance costs and uncertainty about the economy and a possible downturn. And having the flexibility of this model, means that you can go and do it knowing that, okay, you've got a 6-month commitment, but you know exactly what the cost is going to be, and you know what your maximum liability is for it.
Yeah, and you get no unemployment claims coming your way.
Right?
Yeah, 100%. I'm hearing stories. I'm working with a lot of leaders in Boston, where you're at, and they're telling me now that some of their account executives can be working for 4 months. They might be green, brand new. They're good. They're brand new, and they're getting poached from the neighbor with a 30% increase. So, like, good luck finding them, let alone good luck keeping them. And when we created CloudTask, the unemployment wasn't as low as it was, right? And we were coming to the market with different value propositions. Now we're realizing that they're getting affected by churn, and they're getting affected by the cost of just finding people, right? Go to San Francisco, try to find an SDR for less than 95 grand. If he's available, there's a reason he's available. That's what happens when it's 3% unemployment.
But in the industrial space, that's reflected in RSMs that don't do prospecting the way they used to. It's reflected in inside salespeople that don't bother following up on trade show leads. It's reflected in, it's a different, the symptoms are different, but that full employment reflects itself in the industrial space as well.
In my opinion, it's a whole different animal, right? We have all these hyper-growth SaaS companies that are just raising money. They're going cash flow negative for that eventual exit to make their investors buy them and make money. Industrial companies are the elephants, right? And it's hard. I saw this when I was working in surgical robotics. I was selling precision laser-guided spine surgery, and surgeons would push back. They would rather do it by hand. Why do they rather do it by hand? It wasn't that having a perfect bullseye didn't make sense to them. It's because they're doing financially well for 15 years, and go tell somebody who's been doing very well for 10 years that, hey, I want to change the way you're doing business, right? And it's very similar, in my opinion, to what's happening in industrial. They're doing 50 million sales, they're doing 100 million sales. They don't have that urgency to either change or die, right? It's when you know that change is so hard, they get away with doing nothing. And they just see their growth curve slowing down, but they're still very profitable, right? And then in their mind, the leaders are like, okay, well, I can't change my sales culture. I can't change my sales tool. I tried it. It's too expensive. Let me just make an acquisition here, a merger there. They start growing in different ways, not even realizing that if you get a sales team that actually does exactly what the sales team you had did 25 years ago to get you here now, you'd be in good shape. Because let's face it, the guys that are not hitting the phones anymore, some of these guys have been with those companies for a very long time. Those actions that they did to get them to where they got to now, they're not doing them anymore. And leadership is saying, you know what, I can't move on with somebody who's been here for 25 years. He knows the business, but unfortunately, it's going to cost them the growth, right?
But even more, those salespeople that are these veterans that are revered within the organizations that contributed to this foundation of growth come back to the office and say, there's no point in us getting on the phone. We can't reach anybody anymore. What's your answer to that?
BS. It's complete BS. I will tell you, anytime that someone says something is dead, it's alive. Phone cold calling is dead, it's alive. Email is dead, it's alive. That's what you want. When it's alive, it's about to be dead.
Well, the truth is that most people suck at it. So that it's an opportunity. It's not something that's going downhill.
John, Mike, you have to actually do something to get good at it, right? So you're definitely going to suck at something you don't do.
Right.
It's also not a particularly pleasant task. I mean, it's hard work.
Oh, I don't know.
It's pleasant for me. I think it's pleasant if your culture supports it and you have a culture of coaching.
Right.
It's like going to the gym is more pleasurable for some people who have personal trainers, right? People who don't, it's not. So I think it's pleasurable for like the few people, but then if you have a culture that supports it, you start increasing that bell curve of who enjoys it.
And if you have the right mindset, if you're really out to help somebody rather than just trying to stick it to them, it makes a big difference in a conversation. You're following
everything.
So it's fun. It's actually rewarding if you're doing a good job.
100%.
And I can say from experience, watching what your folks have done with one of my clients, a very young, technically inexperienced salesperson is getting on the phone with the CEOs and presidents of substantial middle market industrial manufacturers, brand names that we would all recognize, and getting meetings set up. So all this stuff about you can't get them on the phone, you can't get past gatekeepers, nobody even has phone numbers anymore, all that kind of stuff. It's
an
a convenient excuse for people that don't want to do it.
Yes.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I think we're for that our mutual relationship. I think we're almost at 20 meetings the first month.
Yeah.
And that's
In a
amazing.
space where people said you can't prospect by phone anymore.
Oh yeah, it's a shock.
And a company where their sales growth has come almost exclusively from sales to existing customers, because that's where the RSMs are comfortable and spend their time. And so this is also particularly exciting for them, because it means that now they've got new account growth opportunities, whereas before they only had sales growth opportunities within existing accounts.
Yeah, I'm like, it's bringing them back to what got them where they got to.
Right.
And then they just had the money to go to trade shows, and they got complacent. And I get it, right? Like, you're doing a lot in sales. It's like, it's hard to, change. And that might happen to us one day, right? 10 years from now when we
But, all joking aside, I think that's part of the reason John and I enjoy these conversations, is because although we're kind of, old crusty guys, we have changed quite a bit. I mean, he went from being a geophysicist to being a web developer to being a strategic marketer, and now a consultant. And we've done a lot of very different kinds of things in our careers. And so I think change, it's exhausting for everybody, but it may not feel as foreign to us. And so that's part of why it's kind of fun for us to talk about.
And for me, I'm always saying, what's taking so long? I'm very impatient. It's like, why aren't we already here? It's and when you go into a consulting arrangement and you start talking that way, they're like, okay, maybe we didn't hire the right guy, but that's what it's about. You have to be willing to take some risk and make changes, because if you don't, things are moving way too fast.
Yeah. Oh, look, unless you're hitting all your numbers, right? If your growth goal is 100% a year.
Who's
but
doing
then
that?
your numbers are wrong. If you're not trying new things and you're hitting your numbers are wrong.
That I agree with.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Aaron Ross came up with the idea, or if he just kind of has been given credit or assumed credit for it, but he's the first that I think of as really having mapped out the BDR, SDR, inbound, outbound, that sort of a very clear structure for these multiple streams in order to make it all work. And he talked about the very specific skills that are necessary for each of those roles, and they're different. Now, you can blend them at certain sizes of the organization, but as you look at those kinds of roles, what do you particularly hire for? What do you think are important? What makes a great SDR? What makes a great AE? That sort of thing.
Well, for me personally, I look for will, and attitude goes a long way, right? And really aligning, what is somebody here for? They're here to help people, or they're here for financial gain, or is it just a job for them? So kind of finding out, we use a culture technology called human intelligence, and it allows us to assess people from a cultural standpoint, and we bucket what a good rep looks like and see how well it matches, which really helps us. So that's stage one for us. But then it's also, we do role plays. So we have a role play session where they're throwing a ball around. We give them chances to role play in real time. And I think for us, we also like to see coachability. So during the first time, we also want to coach somebody and then have them do it again and see if they're coachable, because you can really see someone with the right will, the right attitude, and coachability for us is a home run. We don't look for the sales experience that you think you would, and that's a lot of it has to do with teaching an old dog a new trick, that whole saying. And then we find that with our practices, we want people who have that will first, and then we can teach them. And then it's hard to get our people with a lot of sales experience to kind of change and learn social and learn the whole thing, right? So we don't say no to them, but we just focus really on the will and those kind of skill sets.
What about empathy?
I think empathy is important. I don't know if we necessarily look for that right away, but I think empathy kind of probably rolls up into that whole, energy you get from somebody when you're interviewing for them. I think for us, it's like, yeah. And it's hard for me because I'm not an empathetic leader, so I don't have that empathy. So
you're a New Yorker, right?
I'm a New Yorker, so for me, for everybody, I'm rude. I'm too fast and too straightforward. I have my co-founder alone who's the empathetic half to me, who listens, right? But
that may be more of an AE trait.
Consultative sale, yeah,
Yeah,
AE.
there's more time to listen and figure out what's going on and why the why questions. So
Yeah, but it also goes for an SDR on the phone.
yeah,
I'm like, you want, I mean, you almost, if you look at the career path, you almost want the skill sets at the end, right? So that people can go to that path, and then you're working on those. We only coach 2 skill sets per week. So we find that we have a coaching analyst team. So we have a coaching analyst that listens to calls, checks emails, and then he will then fill out a coaching scorecard. So we track people's progresses week by week, and then the CX manager goes and coaches. And our big thing is just coaching. If there's 5 things to coach, don't coach 5, coach 2, right? 2
mhm.
per week. See that there's changing. I think the big thing with coaching is measuring, right? Like if you coach somebody about an opening to a call and you notice there's improvement, that person's coachable and you probably want to invest in them. If you notice that you're coaching the same things, there comes a point where if someone's not coachable, he might just not be a match with your culture and perform.
So do you do a intern program or something and try to coach them up and see if they turn into full timers or?
We just started an intern program,
Yeah.
and they're going to be called Business Development Associates. If you look at our site, we actually we're all our salaries are visible. So we've heard in the past people that aren't ready for business development reps. They're like, hey, I have a team of 5 people. I don't want them to see you as competition. They're good. We created something called Business Development Associates, which are entry level to business development reps. Because if you think about it, I'll give you a few activities. Connecting with 100 people a day on LinkedIn, commenting, liking, sharing. Important. Probably not at $90,000 a year. Talking on Drift and chat. Important. Probably at not $90,000 a year. Inbound leads, qualifying them and setting up appointments. Very important, but probably not at that salary. So our business development associates come in around $35,000 a year, and they come in with Apollo, with the leads, with the verification. And the idea for them is that they will amplify a BDR, business development rep, because it's why do you want a business development rep? You want them to have high-level conversations with your potential customers, right? And they want to get promoted to AE. So if they have that, if they're not doing the granular work, they're able to execute what you want them for and then move up faster. And that our intern program is going to feed into that. So our intern will feed into our business development associates.
Really smart. We used to use that in the marketing agency world a lot, and a lot of them still do. And it's a great way to find out if they have the chops to do
Some use it in order to identify good people and make sure it's a cultural fit. Some use it as a cheap labor to write blog posts and crap like that.
Well, there's that too. Or it's somebody's nephew,
We have an 18-year-old here, and she's doing extremely well, very smart, very pleasant, and you can take a look at that person and you could say you can be in 3 to 4 years anything you want to be, right? You can be an AE, you can be a customer success manager, because they have the will and they learn fast, right? So it was a very good test for us to show us that, yeah, there's an opportunity with interns and then a career path for them.
So talking about culture and talking about your programs, let's shift. You're talking to us from Medellin in Colombia, and you've got another office that you just opened up in Bogota. So why Colombia, and what's the reason, and how does it impact business? And let me just say, one of the things that you've done that I think is brilliant is make it easy and encourage your American clients to come visit there, see your facility, see your people, see the team. I mean, that made a difference for me to see how you guys are doing it. But how'd you end up there, and what's the advantage of being there?
So I ended up there randomly, where my advisory board member said, Amir, let's go visit Medellin. And I said, okay, fine. And I spoke with Daniel Agudelo, who's now our senior CX manager. He was our hotel manager. And he was from Florida originally, and he was, great guy, great energy, a lot of empathy, and some of the things we look for. And I said to myself, with training, with development, I could turn this profile into a top sales guy in software. And we then applied to a Pro Colombia government-sponsored program, and we're accepted. And it's a 3-hour flight from Miami, and
it's great
in the same time zone. So, I feel like people speak the same amount of Spanish to me here as they do in Miami, so there's no difference there. And location-wise, I can be in Boston the same day. I can be anywhere. So it puts us really well situated, where we can service Latin America and the Americas from one headquarters. We can be on site in the same day. And those are the reasons why we chose it. And stability, there's a lot of stability, like probably one of the most stable Latin countries now. And it just has
Article
such,
in the Wall Street Journal a couple weeks ago talked about how it's become quite a tech hub. There's a lot of
yeah.
people right now.
Rappi's the first $1 billion Colombian company that came out of the Y Combinator, and we just see that we see a really good future for Colombia for the next 10 to 15 years, and we want to be part of that, and we want to be part of giving back, because we're giving people jobs and opportunities that normally they can't find, and they're treated in a way that is unusual in the culture, where sometimes it's more of an employee-boss relationship. Where here, like I said, people are walking around, they're drawing on the wall, and when you give people creativity, they shine. So
You've
everything.
also got a ton of expats there. I mean, walking through your office,
Yeah,
there's probably 50% Colombians, but there's a bunch of Americans, there's a bunch of Brits,
UK,
there's a bunch of all kinds
That's
of people.
one of the
all kind of countries, and we just literally got our visa situation down, so we're actually going to be moving people here. And we've actually had somebody move from Chicago here. I'll tell you, it's the real truth. If you're making $150,000 in San Francisco and you're spending 160, and you're broke, you'll come to Colombia. The number you'll make is less, but you'll save a greater percentage of that money and you'll live a better lifestyle. So it's all perceived, right? Someone said to me, they go, Amir, I see what you're doing. You're hiring labor at a lower cost. And I go, well, I'm the CEO. I'm taking home, 1/4 of what I would take in the States. Am I, cheap labor? No, my cost of living is just lower, right?
I think the day I was there was a guy that had just graduated from his doctoral program at Harvard or
Yep.
MIT, whichever
he's
one.
here. Yeah.
And he had gone to work for you all.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm
we're
definitely
building.
going to retire there. So
That's a smart move. Yeah, smart thing. But back to Ed, what you said, and we also want people to come here, because if you're not willing to come here, you don't see the upside. And this is not. We're not looking for the 3 to 4 month engagements. We're looking for people who want a team of 20, and we can really make an impact, right? And
Right.
when people come here, you see the facility, you see the managers, you see what you get, and you're like, oh, I'm getting a lot. And Ed, you were someone who came down, and you were really wise, right? Because you talk to everybody, and I see you in the Slack channels, and you're getting the team's full effort in every direction, as you should, because they know that you made a commitment to them and they made a commitment to you, and it's very much real, because a lot can be done over a Zoom meeting. But going to dinner with people, going on a hike with them, you just build a connection that's you can't replace, right? And people, people here, they want to make you proud, right? Like, I think when people talk about Ed and the accounts that we work together, there's a sense of like, we need to make Ed proud, right? It's not a sense of like, he's a customer, I got to do X, Y, Z. It's like, he spoke to us, he believes in us, like, and so it's coming down here is really important, because at the end of the day, we're a team, right? And I think the concept of somebody has to be a W-2 to be an employee, I think those days are changing. I think somebody has to represent your culture and produce and work hard to be your teammate. I don't think the engagement defines who you are to a company. And that's just me, but I think that's going to be happening more and more as technology continues to make this world a smaller place and allows us to execute in the cloud.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to Rod Foyer for making the introduction, even if Jack thinks he did. So let's come back to industrial companies, and we're running out of time and want to wrap up. But John and I spent so much time talking about this. These companies want to grow and they believe in what they do, but there's just this barrier. And what are your thoughts for the future about this model to kind of bolt on PPC, intent data, business development, inbound lead follow-up, trade show lead follow-up, kind of as a box or a service to drop in front of the typical RSMs for an industrial company?
I think it's going to get easier and easier for us to help industrial companies with the case studies that we're producing together, right? I think that the facts will speak for themselves, and it's interesting because, we at CloudTask have been talking about, what some of our clients look like, and, we end up having a lot of security technology customers, and we do really well in that space, but it's so hard. So we're saying to ourselves, like, just because we're really good in that space, we have a lot of customers and we have all the case studies, let's help industrial companies, because it's kind of a home run.
Isn't that funny to think of it? Those RSMs think it's so hard. They think they go so hard and they can't get anybody on the phone. And you guys relish those opportunities because you think they're easier.
Low-hanging fruit. I'm like, they're not using LinkedIn. They're not using social. They're not using Facebook. They're not hitting the phones. They're not even emailing. They're really just kind of waiting for it to come to them. And it's, if you put 2 wolves next to each other, and one that's waiting for the steak to be fed to him and one that's hungry and wants to get the steak, that wolf that's hungry is going to win. And that's kind of who we are and how we come into these accounts. The biggest thing that we face is probably our teammates feeling threatened by our performance, which is You know, I don't think the right way to look at it, but you know, they don't like somebody coming in and just hitting the phones, making appointments, because then it makes them look a little bit like, you know,
Well,
bad.
maybe it's time for them to retire to Columbia, you know, because
Maybe, I don't know, or pick up the phone.
John, I'm sure you've seen a lot of situations where you've seen marketers do a great job driving leads for companies, and not just industrial companies, but many companies don't follow up on those very well. This is such a huge
Google doesn't follow up. I filed out a form for Google Hire. It took them 90 days to follow up with me. I basically like told the guy, and he apologized. I even put on LinkedIn like, hey, I'm looking for human HRS software. Is anybody? I had a social intent signal. I filled out a form. The biggest companies aren't following up. It's amazing.
Well,
You know, I think here at CloudTask we get like 60 MQLs a month, and we follow up them like 10 times. You know, almost too much, which is kind of funny. But that's because we're you know, bred out of that following up culture. But yeah, you'd be shocked. The big
it's just a
organizations.
process thing. Anybody could modify that level of engagement. You know, it's just a question of what's there. You know, what pieces do you have in place to do that? You know, and they don't. Most companies don't even know what the value of that BDR level is. And,
so bottom line, it sounds like, I think, John, this meshes very well with our conversations. Companies need it. They may not realize they need it. They may think their salespeople are doing it. Their salespeople aren't doing it. And if you go and look at the status of leads, most of them just lie fallow. And here's an interesting way to address that.
yeah, for sure. I think the sky's the limit for you guys. I really do.
Well, that's why they're called CloudTask.
Yeah, it's true. No, I
right.
appreciate that.
This has been terrific. Anything else we should touch on before we wrap up?
I think for now, I think the next time we have to talk about some case studies and some facts, right? And
Cool.
get data driven. But no, I appreciate you guys having me, John and Ed. This is awesome.
Cloudtask.com, right?
Yeah, cloudtask.com. You can find me on literally, you can message me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. I'll message you back in 10 seconds.
You mean there's somebody that you haven't connected with on LinkedIn yet?
Probably not. I was liking Ed's Instagram pictures before we even met. He doesn't realize it, but it was part of my social strategy. Yeah.
Okay.
Subconsciously, I got into his head. He's like, who's this Amir guy?
All right, Amir, this has been awesome. Thank
Guys,
you.
thank you so much.